Be confident, be bold, be authentic, but don't forget to take action. This is Ordinary to Badass, where our stories empower women to step into the spotlight of their own lives and pursue what they're truly passionate about. It's time to step into the arena and become more than just extraordinary. It's time to become a badass with your host, Marie Sonneman.
Welcome to Ordinary to Badass, episode number 27. In this episode, I will be talking to Mary O'Donoghue. Mary is a best-selling author, a former Oprah Show post-producer, and a media coach. If you are a mom, an author, or in the field of media, you are totally going to want to listen to this episode. In this episode, we talk about failure, a positive mindset, and progress over perfection. Mary is a total badass, and I know you're going to love it. Stay tuned. Welcome to Ordinary to Badass. Whether you're ordinary or badass, I'm glad you're here. Today's guest is Mary O'Donoghue. Mary, thank you so much for being here. Excited to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Marie. I'm very excited to be here.
So before we go any further, I have got to ask you, do you consider yourself to be ordinary or badass?
Oh gosh, a badass for sure. I
Love
worked
it.
in television for many years, and even I would say as a teenager, I look back and think of things I did, and not getting in trouble kind of things, but just standing up for myself kind of things. So I think I've been a badass for a while.
Can you give us an example of that? Like as a teenager, a time where you stood up for yourself and felt like a total badass?
Yes. I remember being in typing class when it was, okay, this is how old I am. There were typewriters. Your audience may not know what that means, but there were typewriters, and I went to a Catholic all-girls high school in Chicago. And I remember the nun standing up in front of all of us girls and saying, no matter what you choose to do in your career, girls, it's so important to know how to type, because then you'll have something to fall back on. And I just remember physically removing my hands from the typewriter and the nun saying, Mary O'Donoghue, why did you take your hands off the typewriter? And I said, Sister, I have no intention of falling back. And I was 17.
Right.
So,
I love that.
if she had said someday you might need to write a book and you'd rather not be typing it with two fingers, which is how I type my book, because
Right.
I didn't know how to type. But she motivated me by failure. And, someday you'll fail. And so you need to know that. And I think that's really what a badass is somebody who is underestimated.
Yeah.
And doesn't live down to those expectations.
I love that. So can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes. I am Mary O'Donoghue. I am a best-selling parenting author, a media coach for authors. I specifically work with authors. And I'm a former Oprah Show post-producer, and I've worked in television for 30 plus years. So in my career, working behind the scenes as a post-producer, or I started as a stage manager out on the set, and then an associate director in the control room. And then I worked my way into the edit room, and which has slightly better hours to sleep in, but it keeps you up far later. So then as a senior post-producer, that's what I most recently did.
Through your journey of being a producer and doing all of this stuff, did you know this all along, or did you just kind of figure it out as you went?
No, that I wanted to be a media coach, you mean?
Well, from being a media coach, being a producer, kind of, it sounds like from the outside that it's planned out, right?
No.
But life rarely goes that way. But can you talk about that a little bit?
No, it wasn't planned out at all. I had a health issue where I was suffering from a neurological issue caused by mold in the house that I had purchased with my husband. And I got sick, and I was using a cane to walk. And it was hard to do media work. This was post Oprah. This would be like 2014, 2015 in there. And a friend suggested that I media coach somebody she had met at a conference. And I texted back, I'm not a media coach. And she said, you media coach me all the time. Coach, be a coach. And so I did, and I coached via Skype. And, that client hired me. And to this day, unless she hears this, she's not going to know that there was a cane beside me because I was having so much trouble walking. I needed a cane for about 7.5 months, but that is far behind me, and I'm doing great now and have been for quite some time.
So when you were having the health issues and you had the cane, how did that affect your morale?
Well, it was very difficult at first because I am someone who's always on the move. And when you're somebody who's always in the car, dashing to the next thing, picking up 2 kids, running to this, running to that, making sure I get to this edit or this show or whatever it is, working in TV, not being able to do that is very demoralizing. And I'm also the person that people depend on. And then I had to be the person, who depends on other people. So that was difficult, but I think that that's a gift of humility in that experience, because when you are always the one sort of helping others, it's an ego boost. And that's not the point of it, of helping others. But
right.
When you are humbled and you are the person who really needs help, my kids had to help me a lot, my husband, friends, everybody, really. And so I learned that is actually a gift, to be able to accept help with grace and gratitude. And so, I think it was part of my journey. Mm-hmm. And now I'm past it, and I'm grateful for every step I can make on my own. So I think it was a gift.
So what would you say to somebody who's going through that right now, who's struggling with health issues or not able to do what they're usually able to do, and maybe they're feeling discouraged by it?
I hear you. I know how you feel, I would say. And also search for the gift. Because when my illness was neurological. So I dealt with memory loss, forgetting words, forgetting conversations, trouble walking, collapsing, all of that stuff. And it was really, really difficult. And there would be times when I was just, sitting in bed by myself during the day, because I couldn't really do anything. And it was silent and quiet in my brain too, for the most part. And I learned to find the gift in that. And because it was such a different experience for me to actually stop, and listen, listen to what I wanted to do in my life, that was very powerful. So I would say look for the gifts, because you might be surprised. As hard as illness is, sometimes there are gifts there. So search for them, because they may not be easy to find.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, that's what I would do. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it can be easy to get caught up in the negative or the bad things that are happening, especially when you're going through it. But I love that, to search for the gifts. Let's talk a little bit about your wins. Share with us what you're most proud of accomplishing.
Oh my gosh. I'm proud of a lot of things. You mean professionally?
You pick.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I'm a mom of 2 this week. As of this week, I'll be a mom to 2 adults. My son and daughter both will be over 18. I'm extremely proud of that. I'm really proud of writing my book. I wrote a parenting book that came out in 2010, 10 years ago. It was traditionally published, and I'm super proud of that, because at the time I would not have described myself as a writer. I was writing emails. I like to think they were good emails, but I didn't think of myself as a writer. So I think I'm most proud of stepping out into the unknown and going through doors that opened for me without having any clue about what was on the other side of those doors, and if I was up to the task of walking through them.
So what was the name of that book? And can you share with us something that most people don't know, what it took to accomplish writing that book?
It's called When You Say Thank You, Mean It. And the subtitle is, because the publishers like a long subtitle. So it's When You Say Thank You, Mean It, and 11 Other Lessons for Instilling Lifelong Values in Your Children. It's a month-by-month guide to teaching children values like gratitude, compassion, integrity, commitment, joy, forgiveness. Yeah, I think the thing that people don't know about it, I would have to say the reason that I did it, not a lot of people know. A dear friend of mine had died suddenly, and he was a producer. He was exactly my age. This was right before the book was even a thing. And I drove home from his funeral, and I remember saying out loud, because my husband and I driven separately, I said, his name was George, and I said, George, you didn't get enough time to live your dreams. Because I know that he had wanted to do certain things that he didn't try. He pulled back from some of his dreams, and then he was gone, and he was young. And so I said out loud, the next time something comes along in my life, I know with absolute certainty I cannot do, I will do it anyway for you. Those exact words. And I said those in January of 2008. I'll never forget those words, because those words changed my life. So I knew someone who had an agent, and she was telling her agent about what I was doing with my kids. Her agent contacted me and said, this is a book. And I was like, this is not a book, and I'm not a writer. She was like, well, write a proposal, and sent me the proposal, other proposals. And I used that and sent back a proposal, which I thought was fantastic. And then she sent back, first I looked at the Word doc and I thought, oh my gosh, she loves it. And then I opened the, final showing markup and saw that there were many, many pages of notes. And it more than doubled in size by the time I rewrote the proposal and sent it back to her. And then she called like 6 months later. I never called once. I was the weirdest client of an agent ever, because I was way too busy working for Oprah at the time. I never thought I would write a book or it would get an offer. But she called about 6 months later and said, hey, we have an offer on your book. And I literally looked at the phone and said, who do I know in New York? I was at the Oprah Show. I looked at that, and it was my agent with an offer. And my first thought was, I can't write a book. I'm not a writer. And then I had to remember that promise I made to George. And so what a lot of people don't know is I became an author, a best-selling, award-winning author, because of a promise I made to my friend.
That's so good. So you talked a little bit in there about what you did with your kids, and that's what the book was based off of. Can you give me an example?
Sure. So we're in gratitude month right now, because we still kind of do it even though they're adults.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, certain parts of it have just stayed habits. When they were like a few years ago, I turned to my son one time and I was talking about Respect for Others Month. And he said, Mom, think for a minute. Do we need to do the exercises, or have we got respect for others down? And I was like, oh my gosh, you do. And he said, see, it works, Mom. But we still do certain things in gratitude month. Like we keep a gratitude board where we just write what we're grateful for, one person per night. I've collected those over the years. So it's so cool to see what the kids have written.
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, my daughter wrote, I'm grateful that this will be the year that I will get like a new puppy or a new dog or something, because we already have a dog. And my son wrote next to it, I'm grateful that my sister can still dream.
So cute.
But the neat part of that story is when we moved from Chicago to Nashville, my daughter was missing her friends in Chicago, and my son said, it's time we got her that second dog. And he, said, I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to make it happen. And he convinced me and my husband, who were fine with one dog, to get a second. And so now we have two dogs. Oh. So her what she was grateful for has come to be thanks to him.
But that's pretty cool that he took the time and took his own money and went and got that for her.
Oh yes, he campaigned for it.
I love that.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about your struggles. Tell us about a time when you gave up and now you wish you wouldn't have.
It's such an interesting question, because I can't think of anything I've given up on that I wish I wouldn't have. I've given up on lots of things. I've tried lots of things. I'm a person who will get out, especially since losing George. And that was, was December of 2007. So really since January 1st of 2008, I have had this attitude of, I will say yes to things that scare me. So I've said yes to a lot of things that scared me, or, I've tried a lot of things. And then if they didn't work, I've just been like grateful for that experience and what I learned, because you always learn. And so I don't think there's anything that I wish would have happened differently. I'm grateful for all the lessons I've learned. I think sometimes when, being an entrepreneur or an author, it's like walking through a maze where you can't see from above. And so I've walked through a lot of these mazes and gotten to the point where I've hit enough walls and I'm turning back. This must not be my maze. And then I've gotten in other ones that led somewhere, but I don't regret what I learned from all of those experiences.
You gave the example of being an entrepreneur is like a maze, but sometimes it feels like life is like a maze anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you experienced your tough times getting even to be a producer on the Oprah Show. That's pretty amazing. What was your mindset like going into that?
Well, I've always been pretty confident. And I got the job on the Oprah Show because I worked with somebody at NBC in Washington, D.C. as a director who they hired, who then got a job with Oprah. And then he called me and said, "Hey, will you come work here with me?" I haven't used a resume for many, many, many years in television because everything is, referrals or somebody who wants to work with me again. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in television, especially when I was kind of coming up in the business, it was extremely male dominated. And the type of stuff I was doing, directing, stage managing, associate directing, there were mostly men doing it when I started. That's changed now, but not as much as I would like it, but it's definitely better. So I had to develop a thick skin really, really early on. And so I've just been a confident person because I kind of had to be, because if I wasn't confident, I would have gotten left behind. And I'm a badass, so I have no intention of getting left behind, Marie. So
right.
I remember in classes, and I'm like 5'5", and I remember like tall guys being in my, audio production class in college or something. And they would say, "Okay, who wants to be the first one to try what we just taught?" And I would just raise my hand and just, you could barely see me with all these big tall guys around, and they didn't want to go first. They didn't want to be embarrassed. I was like, "I'll be embarrassed, bring it." And I would do it wrong and learn. And I loved that. And so,
yes.
And so you develop a lot of confidence when you're not afraid to fail.
Yes.
And so, being at Oprah, it was, it wasn't a difficult transition because I already knew the director, and it quickly became a family.
Yeah. I love that, especially the failure stuff that you were talking about, because I think too often we think we fail, I'm a failure, and then just don't try anymore. But the more you fail and are okay with it, or just adjust or adapt, the more confident you get.
Yeah, I think if you're failing, you're a doer. You're not sitting on the sidelines. And so if I fail, I just think, okay, well that was the wrong thing. That was the wrong thing. But I learned this, and this. I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z again, but I am going to do A, B, and C because those work. We look at things that don't succeed, overall projects, let's say, as like a wash, right? Like that was a failure. But it's very rarely the case that every single thing you did on a project was wrong. Mm-hmm. Usually there are some things you can pull out of it that were actually good. And that's what I do. I just look for the things that worked. And then the things that didn't work, I know I'll never do those again. And so it keeps making me better and better at what I do, because I keep eliminating those things. Whereas if I'm waiting around for things to be perfect, I'm going to, put something out there that has no data behind it, no research, no real experience behind it. So it's pretty much doomed not to work. Whereas if I try, some of it at least will work, and I can take that and move it to the next.
Yeah. And I think that's good for all of us to remember, is to take the failure and just pick out what worked and what didn't work, and then kind of adjust from there, as opposed to scrapping the whole thing.
Yeah, I never think of myself as a failure. I never identify with the failure, because if 50% didn't work and 50% did work, then you have to choose to see yourself as a failure. You can just as easily choose to see yourself as a succeeder. But we tend not to do that.
Right.
So I just don't attach my identity to that at all. I just take what I can learn and move on to the next thing, because if anybody, you look back to, the first episode of a super successful TV show, they'll be kind of goofy and they won't be really in their character right. And nothing, the staging isn't quite right. The lighting isn't quite right. And then you look at that show 4 years down the line, and they have hit their stride, but they didn't start that way. Nothing starts as excellent, really. I don't know, maybe nothing starts as excellent. Nothing starts as perfect. Maybe
Right.
Things start as excellent. I don't know. For me, mostly things start as flawed, but hopeful.
Yep.
And then they get better from there.
Right. So a lot of times we look at Instagram or social media in general and see the highlight reel, but what we don't see is the hardships and the failures along the way. Can you share with us a story about one of the hardships that you have faced to get to where you are today?
Oh my gosh, there's been a lot of hardships. I think health for me was one of the biggest, because it was at a time when the Oprah Show was over, and it was at a time when I needed to create a business for myself. And I was very motivated to do that. And so that was incredibly difficult, because it was just whether my health would cooperate on that given day, whether I would have energy. And that was really hard. I'm just trying to think. There's been a lot of struggles in television. If I look at my media career, there's been jobs I didn't get, things I wanted to work out, things I pushed for, that ended up being closed doors. And that has been really hard. But when that happens, of course I'm disappointed. And then I sort of sit back and think, okay, well, now if that door is closed, what door do I need to push open? And sometimes I'll go back. There was a job I really wanted when I was in radio, when I first started out in media, and I was an intern at a radio station. I had worked so hard. There were not a lot of women. I was, working whatever hours they needed me to work. And I did everything I could. And then I applied for an opening, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to have a radio job, and I'm going to be a DJ. And I applied for the job, and I did not get it. And I was crushed. And so a day or two later, I went to the station manager and I said, can I have a meeting with you? And he said, sure. And I said, I appreciate the fact that you didn't hire me, that you didn't feel I was experienced enough. If the job was open in another 6 months, and I was applying for it again, what would make you hire me? And he was like, if you had this experience, if you did this, if you did this and this and this, those skills would make you hire me. And I said, okay. And I went and developed those skills. And then 6-8 months later, there was a job. I came back and I got hired. And so I think any sort of hardship, I really always try to find the lesson. Like I said, the gift, because doors are closed for a reason. And when I looked back at that experience, I was grateful that he didn't hire me the first time, because I think I would have fallen on my face. I wasn't ready. And he knew that. And I also think he wasn't used to people coming back who didn't get hired and who said, I appreciate that I didn't get hired, please tell me the reasons, because I want to do better. And I've used that throughout my career. It doesn't always work. People don't always give you the job later, or maybe you missed that opportunity for good. But I think people respect you for coming back and saying, thank you for considering me for this position. I'm grateful for what I've learned here. How can I be better? What would have made me a stronger candidate? And I think that's a really good thing that has helped me throughout my career.
Yeah, I don't think people do that often enough, kind of like the failure thing we were talking about. They just feel like, I failed, I didn't get it. But if you can learn something from it and move on, it's so helpful.
Yeah. And you're right. I don't think a lot of people do it. So it really makes you stand out just asking that question and just not being defeated by failure. Like I said, even then in my early career, I didn't identify as much. I didn't identify that I was a failure. And if I'd gotten that job earlier, I might have stayed in radio and never worked
Right.
for Oprah and never done TV. So
Right.
every closed door, then it forces you to look to see, well, what doors are open and what doors can I push open?
Do you know where you learned that or where that came from? Or is it just something you kind of adapted along the way?
It was what I adapted along the way. I wasn't taught that specifically. But there's a lot of disappointment and rejection, especially in fields like television. There's a lot of people who want the jobs. And so you're going to have to learn to deal with that. I never thought I was going to get everything. But I knew I would work hard to get every possible job I could, especially when I was starting out. And I remember in one case going back and actually reprimanding somebody for not hiring me. Talk about being a badass. Because it was a situation where we had been told, hey, you have to come to this sort of audition to do technical work on a TV show in jeans and it said women don't wear, dresses or whatever. And two women showed up in skirts and we were in college. Two college girls showed up in skirts and they both got hired.
Mm-hmm.
I did not get hired. And I went and talked to the guy who did the hiring and I said, hey, not fair. Those girls couldn't even get up on the ladder to do the lighting. I got up on the ladder. I did the lighting. You should have hired me. And he said, okay. And I was, standing up for myself and he said, okay, you got the job. And then within honestly a month, both those other young ladies were gone because they weren't willing to do the real job, which was not a fun job. It was heavy and moving lights and equipment and everything. I was willing to do it. And so I outlasted them. And many years later, got to work with that same guy in Chicago. And he was like, I remember you. You made me hire you.
I love that because I think it's so important to have a voice for not just women, but like the things that are important or just have some values,
Right. Yeah. He probably hired them because he thought they were, fun to have around. I don't know. This was a long time ago. I hope that he wouldn't have gotten away with that now, but he's a good guy. He just made a bad decision, but he rectified it when he hired me.
But maybe you taught him something by speaking up. And sometimes that's what it takes is one person to speak up and then somebody else is like, okay, yeah, that was kind of messed up of me.
Right.
So I'm sure from working on the Oprah Show or when you're a media coach and being a parent that you had a lot of kind of balls in the air at one time. Did you ever struggle with any type of mom guilt? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I would call it guilt. Overwhelm for me, I think is what I would call it. Yeah, because, in television at the Oprah Show and elsewhere, other talk shows, it is not a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday kind of thing. I would start work at 10 a.m. and work till we were finished. So sometimes that was 6, sometimes that was 2 a.m. And I worked a lot of Sundays. So I worked a lot of 6-day weeks. But then I'd be off all summer. I'd be off for about a month at Christmas. I'd be off for spring break. We had similar breaks to my kids. Mm-hmm. So I think I would feel overwhelmed and I would feel like I had to be in 2 places at one time. And that was super stressful. So I'd have to dash out of an edit to pick up my daughter at gymnastics so she wouldn't be, left by herself or whatever, That was hard. And I probably did feel guilty about it when I think about it now that they're adults, I think in terms of feeling overwhelmed. But being a good parent was always a priority for me. So that's why I had created the system for teaching the kids values. And that's why we did it from when they were 5 and 10. And so, because I remember having a moment thinking, what are we teaching our kids? And because my husband owned a recording studio in Chicago, he had his own business. I was working for Oprah, and my daughter, when she was 5, had tried to take a candy bar from a checkout, And I'd seen it and I said, what are you doing? And she was like, nothing to see here. I have no idea what you're talking about. And then I said, what's in your pocket? And she pulled it out and put it back. And I said, you know, we got in the car and I said, what have, you know, Dad and I taught you about stealing and lying? And she's, you know, crying. And I thought, oh my God, what have we taught her? I think we've been leading by example, and that is not enough. And so that, you know, when they were 5 and 10, that really made me shift and think I have to be super intentional about teaching them values. Both of us do as parents, because I didn't want it to be they're grown up and, oh, I should have taken the time to teach them about gratitude or compassion or self-respect or respect for others or integrity. They have that. And so I can look back and certainly find moments where I failed plenty of times, where I let my kids down or I let work down, you know. But overall, if I look at the big picture, you know, my husband and I have raised these 2 remarkable people, and I'm super proud of how intentional we were about that.
Yeah.
We still are.
Well, it sounds like you're very intentional about it, but the bigger picture is that your kids got to see you pursuing your dreams also and going for it. And so hopefully that will also be instilled in them that they can do what they want to do.
Yes. And strangely enough, Marie, they both want to go into some sort of media. My daughter is interested in television directing. My son is interested in film directing. He's at film school.
Oh, funny.
And my daughter's going to be majoring in television next year. So they really must have liked some aspect of it.
Is your husband in media or no?
Yes, he's an executive producer and a VP of creative. Yeah. So,
okay.
yeah.
So it's in their blood.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's switch and talk a little bit about mindset. Tell me about your mindset and how it has led to your badassery.
Well, I think I have a pretty positive mindset. And, you know, I was talking about when I was sick and when I couldn't walk and I would collapse and things like that would happen. So for me, like being able to go grocery shopping and come back out and not have like stumbled or something, I would get to the car and I'd say, good job. Wow, you did such a good job. Like I would talk to myself like that. So because I went through that illness, I talk to myself like that now. And even if it's that I walked somewhere and I came back an hour later and I was on my feet for an hour, I'll be like, you did so good. But even anything I do, if I write something that I like, and I'll think, wow, that's good. You did good. I'm so proud of you. I actually say that to myself during the day. I'll say, I'm so proud of you. And so I think that comes from that illness, because I couldn't talk to myself in a negative way when I was going through that and get through it. I had to be a voice of encouragement for myself, because even though my family was encouraging, my friends were and everything, they didn't know what it was like. They didn't know how hard it was some days just to physically walk or remember something. Literally, I will get home from the grocery store, Marie, and I will have remembered everything without a list. And I'll just be like, oh my God, that was amazing. Because that might not have happened 4 years ago.
Right.
And so that, I think my mindset is positive and encouraging. And it's a privilege to encourage somebody, isn't it? I mean,
yes.
If you have a friend and you encourage them and you see them thrive, that is a privilege to be part of that experience. It is just as much a privilege to encourage ourselves. And that's how I look at it. I look at it as I am the person who gets the privilege of encouraging me. And that doesn't mean I think I'm perfect or flawless or anything like that, but it means I'm worthy. I see myself as worthy. Worthy of great opportunities, worthy of success, also worthy of those failures, worthy of those missteps, worthy of those lessons. So because I, even in my book, that I wrote for parents of kids, age 5 through 12, I talk about that. I talk about this idea of being worthy of an interesting and full life. And an interesting and full life is not a perfect life. There are hills and valleys and mountains and, great things that you have to traverse. And so that's the kind of life that I think is really worthwhile. And so there is failure in that life. And I embrace that journey. So I have a very positive mindset, I think, because I have to, and because I see it as a privilege.
Yeah. It sounds like you're your own cheerleader. Like you root yourself
Yes.
on. But then I also think whether you're being your own cheerleader or you're beating yourself up, it's contagious. Whatever one you're doing, it's easier to keep doing that same thing. So I like what you said about, you know, encouraging yourself and kind of just being grateful, having gratitude.
Yes.
So do you have
Absolutely.
any tips or tricks to help us improve our mindset?
Well, I think, you know, if you think in terms of being sort of your own cheerleader or your own best friend, that's so important. If you wouldn't say it to anyone else, don't say it to yourself. I think when I was teaching this to my kids when they were younger, we talked about the golden rule. You know, do to other people what you'd like them to do to you. But then my son, when he was probably 10 or something, said, and how, you know, let's make it a rainbow rule that you treat yourself the way you want to be treated. So not just other people should treat you how you want to be treated, and you should treat other people how you want to be treated. Treat yourself as if how you want to be treated. I think he called it the rainbow rule. I have to look back in my book now. But it was just so sweet. And so I just think that's so important. Each of us has the privilege of encouraging ourselves, because I think we're all here for a purpose. And if you're put on this earth for a purpose and then your internal dialogue is constantly tearing yourself down, that doesn't even make any sense to me.
Right.
So, and people will tear you down. Outside forces will come and say, you can't do that, or they will have low expectations of you. Like I mentioned earlier, I do not have low expectations of myself. I have expectations that I will always try new things, and that some of them will be a great path and some of them will be the wrong path. But even on the wrong path, you can meet the right people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I would just say that, just be encouraging to yourself, because it is a great privilege to do so.
So can you share with us one of your greatest mindset hacks for confidence and self-esteem?
You know, I've never thought of it in terms of a hack, but I think it is very much the message that you say to yourself. When in the chapter in my book on self-respect, I share what my grandmother who was from Ireland, used to say to her kids, and then she used to say it to us. And she would just say, you're no better than anyone else, but nobody is better than you. And I just remember that from my little Irish grandmother when I was, 7, 8 years old, in her little Irish accent.
That's so good.
Yeah. So I kind of internalized that, which meant that I was no more special than anyone else who was out there, but that all of us are special in our own way. And nobody was, more special than me. And so it's an equal playing field. All of us can excel. So I don't know if that's a hack, but I think it's a mantra. And so I think how we speak to ourselves is, gosh, it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. If I think back to my illness, if I was saying to myself, well, you're never going to walk again, and you're going to have this cane for the rest of your life, and you'll probably be in a wheelchair. I don't think that would have been helpful. But because I believed that I was going to be healthy again, I sought out things that could help me be healthy again. And I did physical therapy and all of that stuff. And I got stronger. So, and now I'm also very respectful of my energy. So if I don't have energy for something, I say no to that.
Right.
Because I don't push myself past, like I used to back in the day.
Right.
Before
so you talked a little bit about what your grandma taught you. Kind of along those lines, if you could share one tip that you wish every female knew about, what would it be?
Wow. One tip. Okay. One tip for every woman. Gosh, I feel like I keep coming back to how to talk to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's so important.
Yeah. And I do remember when my kids were little that I would sometimes say, like, you'd get this one's diaper on, and then you'd get this, they were 5 years apart, or they are 5 years apart. And I would get my diaper bag for my daughter and this, and change your diaper and get my son's coat. And then by the time we were walking out the door, I would realize I had no idea where my keys were. And I would say, oh, I'm so stupid. And this was, again, before I got sick and before I sort of learned how to talk to myself. And that was the S word in our family. And I can remember my kids being like, Mom said the S word. And so I learned not only for if you're a mom, but whoever you are, like if where you're working or whatever, if you talk to yourself, like I was talking to myself like that out loud, listen to what you say when you speak out loud, I think would be my tip. Because we denigrate ourselves in front of other people. We step back from the credit. When someone says, oh, you did such a good job on that thing that worked last week, what do a lot of women say? Oh, well, it was a team effort. And no, take that credit. Girl, just say, well, thank you. And I think that's one of my best accomplishments as a mom, Marie, because my daughter will be 18 this week. And if I say to my daughter, wow, that is a beautiful essay you wrote, she'll say, thank you. Or I'll say, oh my gosh, your hair looks beautiful today. Or I love, like physically, I'll comment, like, that's such a pretty dress on you, or whatever it is. She'll say, thank you. She doesn't push back that compliment.
Right.
She accepts it. So I think that's super powerful. If someone compliments you, accept it with gratitude.
Yes.
That is hard for a lot, of people.
It is. And then think
That's
of yourself when you're giving somebody else a compliment too. Like you're giving it genuinely and out of your heart, but when somebody else just shuns it, how it makes you feel.
Yeah, it's like you're throwing the ball to them and they're like, no, don't throw the ball. I don't want to catch that.
Right.
Right, rather than engage. So yes, accept compliments graciously and gratefully. That's a really good hack.
Yeah, that's really good. And actually, it's kind of funny when you were talking and you talked about the S word and stupid. And then in my head, I also thought about the F word and fat, because oftentimes we call ourselves fat and stuff. But I mean, it's nice to instill those things in our kids too, because sometimes when you're teaching something to your kids, it reminds you, kind of like in your situation, not to say it to yourself.
Yes. I remember talking to my kids about perfection, because my son would talk about that. Oh, I'm not perfect or something when he was little. And I remember we talked about planet perfect and what would it be like if you lived on planet perfect? And well, first of all, it would never rain because, rain's not perfect, right? It has to be sunny all the time. And secondly, everyone has to dress the same, because if it's perfect, then there has to be just one standard. Like we can't dress differently. And so everything really becomes very homogenous and boring in a perfect planet. And so my kids learned early on, like, perfection is not the goal, but progress is wonderful. Progress over perfection any day.
Yes.
Because perfection is it's going to disappoint you, I think, if you do get there. I don't know anyone who has. But
and you're human.
Progress is really neat. When you can look back 6 months ago and say, oh my gosh, look what I've done now, since then. We have a habit of doing it at the end of the year between Christmas and New Year's and talking about what we've accomplished. And so, I'll focus on that and I'll think, well, I'm going to, by this time next year, or, by next Christmas, this is where I hope to be. And I know I'm going to be closer than I am in this moment.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys have a lot of cool traditions in your family. I want to check out your book for like my niece and my nephews and stuff, because I think that's cool stuff to instill in them and lifelong lessons.
Thank you.
So let's talk a little bit about badass advice, and this will be more of rapid fire.
Oh, okay.
What was your turning point for accomplishing your goals and becoming a badass?
My turning point was being underestimated in high school.
Was there something specific?
Like when you were when I talked about the nun who said you'll need type to type, learn how to type to fall back on. And I was like, no, I'm not going to fall back. So I think being underestimated, that was sort of just like set off something in me.
Okay. I love that. Do you have a morning or evening routine that you can share with us?
I do the miracle morning. Are you familiar with that? Yeah.
Hal Elrod? Yep.
Yeah. I do that. I started doing that this year, 2020. And I was not a morning person. I've been getting up at 6 to do it. And now I've decided that in order to do writing, because I want to do it for writing, that I have to get up at 5. And then that first hour is really my self-care. And then I can write, because by 6, my daughter and my daughter's up, my husband's up. So the house gets pretty noisy at 6. So yeah, I do that every morning, and that has been really wonderful and surprisingly easier to get up than I anticipated. But I'm going to switch and do 5 a.m. I'm going to try 5 a.m. this week because I just want to see what I can get done. And because I thought it would be horrible getting up this early, and it is not.
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I used to be
I
such
know
a
you get up
nighttime.
early. Yeah.
I do. I used to be such a nighttime person, but now I try to get up at 4 every morning because I get 10
I
times more
know.
done.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
quieter. So yeah,
Yes.
that's my routine.
Can you tell us one thing that you have learned from a woman in your life?
Sure. Gosh, there is an amazing woman. Her name is Sherry Riley, and I absolutely love her. She is a student of mine and a client of mine, and she wrote a book called Exponential Living. And I love that book. I've read it twice. And I think, gosh, there's so much to learn from that book, but her message is peace is the new success. And that just resonates with me so much because there are so many standards for success. And then we try so hard to achieve those standards, hustle, work hard, work 50, hours a day or whatever, like crazy stuff. But peace is a new success. Boy, when you think about that and you think, what if I'm at peace about what I have and what I don't have and how I spend my time? What's better than that?
Right.
So, yes, I've learned a lot from Sherry. She's a wonderful writer and speaker, and that has really, really stayed with me.
Yes. Peace is your new success. To be yours, embrace the peace in your life and where you're at.
Yes.
Can you share a habit or a practice that has contributed to your success?
Well, I do as part of my morning, but I've been doing it prior to this year. I do transcendental meditation, which I learned during a period of great stress in my life. And oh my gosh, it's wonderful. And it's just repeating a mantra, thinking a mantra in your head. I do it for 20 minutes every morning. Some nights I do it again for 20 minutes. That is really powerful because there is a moment when I'm just thinking the mantra. And of course, then I start to think groceries or, I need to go to the mailbox or whatever. But then I just kind of go back and mantra, whatever my mantra is. And then there'll be a moment where my jaw just relaxes and I'll feel my jaw just drop. And then I just feel so relaxed. And then some days when I'm doing it, I will have that transcendence experience, or at least what it is for me, when I don't have any thoughts. It's just like I'm in an empty room and there's people out there and I kind of know they're talking amongst themselves, but I can't hear what they're saying. And where I am, it's quiet. And that is so relaxing, not to have any thoughts at all. And usually most times when I meditate, I'll have that for a few minutes.
So is it the same mantra every day or a different one?
It is in TM, you go to an instructor and they give you a mantra, which is private. And so I say the same mantra every day. Yes.
Okay, nice. So what do you wish everyone knew about confidence and overcoming obstacles?
I think that, we only have so much time to accomplish our goals or to make a difference. And so not to get into that someday mentality. Forget about someday. Think about now. That's what I would say. Don't wait for the perfect time to start anything because it really doesn't exist. And what is the point, right? Just start. So that's what I would think. I think that if you are forgiving of yourself for the mistakes you're going to certainly make, I should say, then I think you can accomplish almost anything. Yes. So I think I would just say be forgiving and loving of yourself. And I think that's, and if you go into something not thinking, I hope I can do this perfectly, but just like, let's see what happens.
Right.
Go in with that attitude. When I had that opportunity to write the book and I was, I was thinking, I can't write a book. I'm not a writer, there is a 2-word antidote to that I have learned. And that is, so what? So what if I can't write a book? So what if I'm not a writer? How do I know? Let's just try it. And maybe it'll be terrible. And then the worst that could happen is the publisher would say, oh my God, we had no idea you were this terrible. Goodbye.
Even then, so what?
Yeah, you still would have. Exactly. So what is really very powerful.
Yes.
Not to be dependent on the outcome, just to try it, because we don't know the outcome. The outcome could be far better than we could ever anticipate. We very rarely think that.
Right.
We very rarely think, I'm going to try this and it might be like amazing. So I would say use those words. So what? I've never done this before. I'm going to try it anyway.
Okay. That's my favorite. I love it. So how often do you read, and can you recommend a book and share why?
Oh my heavens. I read like a crazy person. I don't online shop. I don't go on Facebook to see what's happening with the latest celebrity. I don't do any of that. It doesn't interest me. I read. So I read when I'm in the car listening to an audiobook or a podcast, but I listen to audiobooks every week, at least one audiobook per week. Oh my gosh. There's so many good ones. But I have read, it is not yet the end of January, and I have read 10 books this year. But that's just because I'm reading all the time. So all my downtime, I don't watch TV during the day. There's just a handful of shows I do watch. I don't binge watch things. And so I all of my downtime is reading. So I have a book on my phone that's going on Kindle. I have at least, I probably have 3 books with bookmarks, and then now 3 physical books. And then I have an audiobook. So typically about 4 to 5 books going at once. That's just because that's the way my attention is.
Okay. So what book do you think you've read the most then?
Well, I finished several. Gosh. Oh my gosh, that's a hard one. So what book, like recent book?
You mentioned that you read like Sherry Riley's book twice. Is there a book you've read like 10 times, or, that you keep going back to?
Sometimes I listen to books more than once too. So one of the books I just read is The 12-Week Year, and I will find out who that is by. And the idea is that you can accomplish as much in 12 weeks as you can in a year, if you're super intentional about what you do. So that, combined with me getting up earlier, has been super helpful in terms of getting a lot done. And so it's Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington, it looks like. Brian P. Moran. Yeah. So that's been incredibly helpful. I really recommend that book. And so every week I make a list of the things I want to accomplish this week, and then I check them. And you know what's great about that philosophy is that it's not about perfection and did you get it all done? Did you achieve it or not? Yes or no? It's what was your percentage? And they have researched that if you get about 85% of those goals accomplished in your week consistently, then you will accomplish that goal within 12 weeks, whatever that long-term goal is, that those are little pieces of the goal. So I've been, this week I was at 88%. Last week I was at 88% of my goals. It took me a couple weeks to get there, but yeah, so The 12-Week Year is really a powerful book. It's one of the best ones I've read this year.
And then I would assume that when you see like that 80%, that's encouraging, it makes you want to push for the next week too.
It is. It does. And then like if I didn't do something last week, it can get moved on to this week because it's based on setting sort of 3 core goals that you want to achieve in the 12-week period, and then breaking those down into what can you do every week to advance those goals. So I'm not writing a book at the moment, although I will be writing a media book this year. But so it would be, breaking that down. So if I was going to write a media book in 3 months, then what would I have to write every day, and how many chapters would I have to write in a week, or whatever it is. So you break it down so it's not intimidating. It's not this massive goal. And you know how people have like streaks of doing something. So, you'll do 20 days in a row. Day 21, you don't do it. And then you're like, oh, I failed. Now I can't. Oh, I've ruined it. I've if you're like trying to eat healthy and then you have like a cupcake on day 21, you're just like, oh man, I didn't do it.
Right.
But this way you could look at it and say, well, most of the time I didn't have a cupcake. And so therefore, you kind of, it's much more forgiving. It's really powerful. It's very new to me. And I'm already seeing that I'm getting much more done. So it'll be interesting to see at the end of 3 months what I've accomplished.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's one of the best books.
So we'll have to check out The 12-Week Year, and I'll definitely put that in the show notes.
Yes.
Let's end with a tip to encourage women who are in the arena fighting for the life that they want, and share how the audience can connect with you.
Sure. I think a tip would be to embrace your own worthiness to be in the arena in the first place, and to accept that you will have strengths and weaknesses that the other people in the arena do not have. So embrace who you are in that space, and keep showing up. That's really the secret. Keep showing up, even when, yesterday was embarrassing, or you did something that wish you wouldn't have done. Show up the next day anyway. So that's really the tip.
I love that.
That's the secret. Yeah. This keep showing up. And I have a wonderful resource for authors, and I primarily work with nonfiction authors or fiction authors who have a topic that is very media friendly. Like if they're writing about something in the culture right now as the backdrop to their fiction story, then they can get media attention for that. It's a little bit trickier to get media attention when you're a non-famous fiction writer. Mm-hmm. It's still possible, but it's a little trickier. So I have a 5 Steps to Media Success mini course that I put together as a free gift, and they can find that. Just go to maryodonohue.com. There's no A's in the last name. It's o'donohue.com. And right there on the homepage, they can sign up, join my community, and they will receive that immediately and be able to do that mini course right away.
Okay, awesome. I want to check that out myself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary, for being on the show. You have been a total badass, and I've enjoyed hearing your story.
Thank you for having me, Marie.
With that, we'll end our show. To all the badass women out there staying in the arena, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, own it and get after it. Hey, before you go, I got to talk to you for a second. Have you checked out the new manifesto, At the Core of Being a Badass? In the manifesto, we talk about what it means to be a badass in 2020. Oftentimes, we think a badass is hardcore, a hard ass, totally intimidating, and maybe they ride a motorcycle or have some sort of gun or weapon. But you know what? That's just not the reality. If you want to know the truth about what it means to be a badass in 2020, check out my new manifesto, At the Core of Being a Badass. Go to www.ordinarytobadass.com and sign up today. Talk to you soon, friend.
Now that you've listened to this episode of Ordinary to Badass, we want to hear from you. Go to our website, ordinarytobadass.com/podcast, and submit your own experience on how you took your life from ordinary to badass, and get the chance to be on a future spotlight episode of the show. That's ordinarytobadass.com/podcast. While you're waiting for the next episode of the show, wipe off the sweat, dust off the dirt, and get back in the arena.